you make sure you have people whose interests are aligned with your interests, because the interest of the wholesaler is to make a wholesale fee. Real estate agents are fantastic, and it's great to have a great agent. I think you got to build a relationship with somebody that you can trust, but a real estate agent is making money off the transaction. So it's really important when you're there, especially when you're new, because it's harder for you to understand what's going on, right? It's hard for you to understand that, oh my God, this foundation thing can be bigger than I thought. And so I think it's even more important, or it's another reason why it's important to have a good sphere of people that are experienced that you can lean on.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Creating Wealth Podcast, where I, Kyle, from Kyle Curtin Real Estate, interview local top dogs in the real estate investing, wealth building, and personal finance industries. Let's build together. What's up, guys? The guest on this week's episode of the podcast is doing some huge things in the local private lending space. Michael has been in several different parts of the real estate industry over his career, from being a real estate agent to an investor to a private lender. In the second part of this interview, Michael and I get to talk about some pretty big topics to set you on a great path to doing great things as a real estate investor. In this episode, we chat about creating the team with the right interests in mind, learning valuable lessons from constantly absorbing, the power of giving when starting a new business, and so much more. There is so much to digest in this episode, and I hope you enjoy. Let's jump right into the episode.
But I think there's two kind of paths that you can take, and there's value to both. But the wealth part, I mean, if you go and you take the job route and you're making $200,000 or $300,000 a year, it is, right? You're making great money. So you have great money coming in every month, right? Or $500,000 a year. But are you really creating true wealth? I don't know if you really are. Or if you take the other path, you might be eating ramen noodles a lot, and you may have roommates, right? And you may live in a multifamily, and you may not drive the car that you always want if you want to take that other path. But I think the other path at the end, I think again, everybody's different, whatever you're looking for as an individual. But if you're okay having a little bit less on the short term and you want it for the long term, I think that real estate and entrepreneurialism is the way to go.
I absolutely love that, man. And yeah, it's like to stem, back to something you said a little bit earlier. I feel like it's not talked about as much, kind of like the mental strain, I guess you could say, that real estate is sometimes, and kind of losing faith, and you haven't been able to reap the rewards of the things that you've been doing, and challenges are coming up every which way, and it's hard to just stick with it sometimes. But if you do, eventually you're gonna get there, and it's gonna be
everybody's gonna get there. I am right. I'm probably the smartest guy with average intelligence, right around. I am not that smart. And the one thing I noticed when I was younger and I was working with people that were older than me, they were wise and experienced, but I don't think they had this level of intelligence that me or you or anybody probably listening to this podcast doesn't have. What you need is determination and willpower. And you need courage, because it's scary. That's all you need.
And I really
eventually you need some people to believe in you too along the way. That helps you to reach things. People believed in me and helped me out along the way, and I hope that I can return the favor. I'm sorry, you go ahead.
Oh, no, that's it's huge, man. It's to be able to have that support circle to go to, because trying to do it on your own is definitely, quite the challenge, especially, I talked about it on one of the other podcasts, actually, that hasn't gotten posted yet, but it, going through this transaction, literally everything kind of has gone wrong, I guess you could say. And like just trying to make it through it, has been pretty tough. But like there have been a couple people that, unfortunately have been able to go to, that are a lot more experienced than I am, that are like, oh, dude, like it's not the end of the world. Like, you just do this, this, and this, and it'll be all right. Like I've done this like a million times. Don't worry about it. And like just building that community and that support circle to get you through the challenges, because like, yeah.
You are 100% right. I'm just thinking back at the CD I used to listen to with Robert Kawasaki, if I'm saying his name right.
Yep.
He said the same thing, and he talked about how it was so important is that when you get to the point where you're going to get married, that the person that you're marrying is okay with that path.
Yeah.
Because if that person wants a guaranteed paycheck every month and wants certain luxury items every month, that might not, there might be conflict later on in life. Can I tell you something? No.
Yeah, definitely.
So I've been in real estate for 20 years. I was very fortunate that I got that. I was lucky, very just stepped in it, that in 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12, I was able to buy a whole bunch of properties, and then they just went up a lot in value. And then I was able to take that money and take it out and then lend with it and then leverage that money to a lending company. So I was very fortunate in a lot of ways. But it never stops being hard.
Yeah.
Right before the pandemic hit, I was building my first ground up it was 11 units, but it was the biggest thing that we had ever done. The only thing I'd done before that was 2 and 3 unit ground up single families.
Yeah.
So we were about 6 months away from finishing a ground up building. And then it was in Boston, so we got a stop work order and they shut us down for COVID. And then the building I'm in right now, I was like, I'm a genius. I bought a commercial property and I thought I got a great deal on it. And then COVID hit and I had the first floor was completely gutted at the time. I couldn't rent it. I'm in this office. And then when COVID hit too, we stopped lending for about 6 months. All the capital shut down. Nobody knew what was going to happen. So I got nervous. So we stopped lending for 6 months.
Yeah.
So and then everybody was working remote too. And the income in the company was going way down because we weren't doing business. And I bought this building in hard money. So had a really high interest rate. So I was sitting in this building at one point completely by myself, trying to figure out, I got all these loans and they're all construction loans and nobody's building and I couldn't rent anything in this building because nobody was even thinking about renting commercial space because at the time, big companies were leaving and everyone was working remote. And I was like, oh, why did I buy this building? And I just remember that was a tough time. And I just think it's a grind. It's always a grind. But the one thing is because I had been through 2008 and I've been through grinds, I guess it does get it doesn't get easier, but you just deal with it, I think, better as time goes on. You start to say, okay, we've been through this before, I can get through it again.
Yeah. That's crazy, man. Like I honestly like kind of forgot about that. Like did like most lenders altogether like really crack down, once like COVID and stuff was really running rampant? Or like be a lot more conservative, I guess you could say.
we had $46 million in loans.
Yeah.
And just about everybody was paying on time. Everything was going real smooth.
Mm-hmm.
Well, COVID hit and like a third of our borrowers asked if they could do a 3-month deferment. That means basically that's a fancy way of saying, I can't pay the mortgage. Can you take 3 months of interest payments and put it on the back end of the loan? We did it like a third of our portfolio, and we use credit lines from banks to lend. I mean, we lend some of our own money, we leverage it in different ways, but we use credit lines from lending institutions. All of them ceased, all of them stopped, either called in their lines or canceled their lines. So we did do some loans for borrowers that had been with us for a long time. We did a couple loans, but our volume went down about 90%. And I think across the board, I think almost all lenders like myself, we just from May of, what was it, 2020, May of 20 till almost until January of 21. He hardly lent at all. Maybe did one or two deals a month for borrowers that we had been with for so long, hell or high water, we were going to continue to service them. But it was scary. It was a tough time. It was really scary. Nobody knew what was going to happen. It was almost like living through 2007, 8 again. In fact, I thought it was.
Yeah.
And I remember saying to myself, Jesus, I was unprepared for 2008 and now I'm unprepared again. But we got through it. I think everyone got through it. And I actually think there's a lot of good came out of it, because I've noticed that I think a lot of investors now understand, because if you started investing in, say, 2010, that was a while ago, right? You don't know what it's like to have a downside market.
Yeah.
Right? All you know is that when you buy something, you could overpay for it and people laugh at you. And then a year later, it's worth $50,000 more.
Yeah.
Not like that is like not the forever reality.
Yeah.
Like markets go up and they go up and they go down. So I think COVID was good for everybody to make us kind of say like, hey, we're in this business and there's risks, and we have to make sure that we're prepared if, what hits the fan, right?
Yeah. That's a really big point, man. Like, like nobody expected COVID at all. It was like one of those like black swan events, like as they say, it's super unpredictable. And like, I think that is, a really, really good point about, like maybe stepping back for a second, like when everything was hitting the fan, or even like, post or whatever kind of time period we're in right now. And just kind of seeing from another angle that like most people have probably never seen before, of like something like this that's beyond unpredictable. And like, how can I, try and like, I don't want to say like try and like stay protected, I guess, something like that, or let hedge maybe. Like, how can I like hedge against the unknown?
Protect
Like
yourself a little bit.
Yeah, like as much as possible. But like, because you're totally right, man. Like I've never seen, or just getting into things like in the past year or two, I've only ever seen things on the upswing so far. Like I haven't seen anything hit the fan. You know what I mean? Like
it's like being a Patriot. It's like being like 30 years old and being a Patriots fan.
Yeah, exactly.
You have no idea what it's like to be a fan of like the Patriots. When I grew up in the 80s and 90s, it was like so bad. It was so bad.
And now it's like, if we have like a Boston team that doesn't win a championship, like at least one a year, we're like, what the hell? Like, this is ridiculous.
It is. I think it's a fine line though, because I think I have bought properties, fix and flips as a borrower using hard money plenty of times. Tons in 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I was doing it all the time. And as a lender, and you say to yourself, okay, the borrower is going to put a down payment down in the transaction costs, and then they're going to pay the mortgage every month. And if they're going to put $100,000 of work into it, they need some startup money. Yeah. So that borrower should probably have like $50,000 in the bank the day they close the loan to have some security. Mm-hmm. But I've gone in as a borrower and I didn't have the $50,000, and I might have been $25,000 short even to close. And I'm scrambling 2 days before the closing to dial for dollars to borrow $25,000 from everyone that I know. Yeah. And then somehow got into the deal and made it work. And that's part of being like a business and an entrepreneur and taking risks. Yeah. But on the same token, if you do that too much, are you just like leaving yourself totally unprotected? I think that is something that's unquantifiable. And it's like I think the longer you do this for, the better, even though you can't quantify it, it'll be a feeling and you'll get better at it. And if you don't, you'll just go out of business. So it's not a big deal.
I love that though. Like finding the balance of using leverage. So even like to your point, man, like there was a deal earlier this year. I tried to buy, I had a 3-family in Lowell under contract for $612,000. And like, that was actually right after. So a couple people kind of put the bug in my ear because I was just looking for like duplexes. Like, this is all I can afford. Like, I'd love to stay in Lowell. Like, 3 families, probably a bit too much jumping in. It was a lot smaller minded thoughts, I guess you could say. And then,
Sure.
a couple people, like, just coincidentally were telling me like, hey, if you want to buy a 3 or a 4 family, which is still considered residential, like, they include, like, whatever it is, like a percentage of the
80,
rents.
80% of the rents. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden your pre-approval's up like a few $100,000. I'm like, oh my God. So like, maybe this isn't the craziest thing in the world. So basically, like, I ended up getting a pre-approval that was substantially higher than the one that I had for, just a 2-family. I was like, all right, like, maybe I can take on a little bit more leverage than I could, while still trying to stay relatively conservative and not like overburden myself. So I was like, all right. So I put this 3-family in Lowell under contract. They were asking 600,000, and I, gave them like a $12,000 like over asking, and then just asked for like a $12,000 closing credit. So, guys, it's like essentially like you're paying like the asking price, but you're getting 12,000 back for your closing. So it's whatever, but
No, that let's just do a side note. Do that on every deal, but go.
Yeah.
Always, that's 12,000 less that you just have to raise, right?
It's huge.
Huge.
100%. Like, if you can do it, like, absolutely run with it.
Yeah. If you're buying a single family with your wife, it's harder to do. I mean, you probably could still do it a little bit, but when you're buying multis, I think that's like, you got to do it, especially once you are putting 20% down. Every penny counts.
Yeah, exactly. And so I put this one under contract for 612, and we're going through the inspection because after seeing it from the open house, like, I just fell in love with it, man. Like, it was a traditional triple decker, like, units right on top of each other. It was on a corner lot, and it had like an 8-car driveway, and like, in a city, and like Lowell especially, like, getting off street parking is definitely not something to take for granted. So
and you're
like,
not just, and you weren't just looking for a financial investment. Like, there was an emotional, well, not an emotional, but there was a life satisfaction, happiness factor that you were going to live there, right?
Yeah,
and so
exactly.
That makes it even more attractive.
100%. Yeah, I fell in love with it. Like you said, like, from like a more personal standpoint, and
You
growing.
can see yourself being happy there.
Exactly. That's words it up perfect. Yeah. And as an investment, like, I was blown away. Like, it was a 9-bedroom, 3-family, units right on top of each other. It was in pretty decent condition, I thought. And I'll get to that in a minute.
Oh boy.
There was a big lesson that I learned from that one, that I'll say. But we're walking through there, and we hit the basement last, which I'll get to that in a second. So, we're walking through the units, and like, the bedrooms are absolutely huge. And like, especially in Lowell, and like, the guys who like might be listening to this, are probably from like around this area. So, you might know, especially, but like, some of the bedrooms, in some of these markets, like Lowell, Leominster, and like some of these other more multifamily heavy markets, like, the bedrooms, you can find some really small ones in there. So that's kind of what I was used to. And I was like, all right, whatever. So walking through, like, you could tell, I mean, like, the interior and like the spaces themselves, they were in pretty decent condition. They needed like a little bit of work, a little bit of update, and nothing too crazy. And the bedrooms and stuff were huge. And like, walking through it, like, I was in awe. Like, each of them had like a gas fired, like a newer gas fired furnace, with the ductwork, like, above the ceiling and stuff.
Yeah.
And like, I was loving it. Like, everything was all separate. Electric was separate. Like, your heat, I believe, was separate. Or yeah, the gas and electric was separate. So everything was going okay. Now we get to the basement, and we find out in the basement that like, there was a ridiculous amount of structural damage that I didn't see right off the bat. And it literally, like, the joists on the basement, like the ceiling of the basement, like, holding up the rest of those 3 floors. If you went around the perimeter of the building, where they were sitting like on top of the foundation, they were separated like an inch or two in some spots. So like theoretically, like the building was just kind of hanging. And like there was a bunch.
Probably not not something that you can fix with like over the
Yeah,
weekend with a couple of your friends.
exactly. Meanwhile, I'm a first time home buyer. I'm like, like I don't have 20 years of experience to be like, oh, like, let me just call this guy. Like we might be able to.
Oh, like more like let's like put all sister joists all over the place,
Yeah,
jack up the house, put in the new, and that would be expensive and a nightmare.
exactly. And like basically what I ended up, learning from going through the basement is it was much bigger than I could chew. And that's kind of, the lesson from this really long story is
Yep.
I figured that, because I got a pre-approval that was substantially higher than what I got, I was able to maybe take on a little bit more leverage for, a potentially bigger return. And I learned from that one that like, if I was to close on that, like I would have been toast. Like that was a much bigger project than I anticipated. And like, that's kind of the lesson here. Well, I ended up walking away from it if you didn't pick up on that, but like, cause I was thinking about getting like a structural engineer out there and like, it stopped making sense. You know what
Right.
I mean? And
Thank God, because sometimes the emotional part
yeah,
starts to make a little fuzzy, right? What's going
exactly.
on when you're not. If you were buying that strictly to rent and you had owned 4 or 5 of them and you
Yeah.
already lived in a house, you just be like, you would have turned around and said, well, oh, this is a great house. I love it. Oh, all right. I'll see you later. Have a good day.
Yeah.
But like, I think it's even harder in the beginning. And then it's harder if you're going to live there because whether you're going to live there or not, I don't know. I don't do it as much now, but I think in the beginning, I think that emotional part,
Plays a big factor.
yeah. And it might not just be you're going to live there. It might be like it's in the center of town. Everyone's going to see it. And then the ego starts to kick in. There's all kinds of things that get us to make bad decisions. So you gotta get through that.
100%. You're totally right. And that was just kind of the lesson there was like, just because I was allowed a good amount more money, like, especially being like a first time home buyer, like if you're looking for your first house hack or like, your first investment property, like as just an investment, like still keep in mind, like the leverage that you're using. And, if something was to happen where, like a COVID or something like that, like, you know, is this actually too much for you to bite off? Or, is this like a decent amount of challenge, to be able to, that's like it's not like so much bigger than you that like if things hit the fan, like you're toast, like you don't even stand a chance. But, just enough
Right.
challenge. Yeah.
No, I'll say there's so many houses out there.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to blow your brains out jacking a house up,
Yeah.
hanging engineers. You put the house down, you finish it, and like and then half the house is cracked and all the
Yeah.
windows are cracked, right?
Yep.
And so why would you put yourself through that? Just when there's probably a house very similar to that, you just haven't seen it yet, but you will.
Exactly. And like there's a lot of lessons to be taken from that, you know what I mean? Like patience and like, just like going out and checking out like even different kinds of properties. But like what I did learn from that one was that I really, really dug like the 3 and 4 units over the two, for
That was a great benefit you got. You got all kinds of lessons out of this deal.
yeah, for just paying for an inspection. Like the amount I learned from that single inspection alone, like I'm gonna carry this stuff for the rest of my life. For like me as a buyer, an agent, like helping clients and stuff out, like the lessons that I learned from that are, so much bigger than, just the money. It's just the tuition cost.
You know what could happen too now outside of living there if you're just buying stuff for investment
Yeah.
and you buy something that all of a sudden is super labor and price intensive
Yeah.
is what happens is now maybe you have X amount of liquidity and you could do a deal and a half and then you could do a deal and now you can do half a deal so you don't have to just raise half now to do a deal with another one. But
Yeah.
if you get into that deal, it takes up all your time. And then all that money that was set aside for the next deal all gets pushed into that deal and you get handcuffed. And then I call that opportunity cost, right? So now you were going to do that second deal and you're going to make a ton of money, and now you can't do it. So getting tied up into a bad deal is it really, it's, I know, because I unfortunately, that story, I didn't back out of my deal. On my second deal, I got into a project that ended up giving me a ton of opportunity cost, really tied me up for like a year, tied me up. And it was a big lesson for me. So at least you got out of that one. Unfortunately, in maybe 2006, I experienced something very similar. Right? I actually went through with it.
Yeah. And it's tough, man. Like, you just never know, and like,
I mean, it's probably going to happen. You're not going to hit a home run on every deal. Like, there's going to be singles and there's going to be some bad deals. But what happens is, especially people use hard money a lot. You get into a bad deal and you use hard money. So now you kind of have to refinance, and you put 20% down, or you put 15% down, and you think, well, I'm going to add value. So by the time I go to refinance this, I'll be at a 70% LTV and I'll get a nice 30-year, fixed loan. But if you get into a bad deal, number one, you might be dialing for dollars halfway through the deal because you ran out of money. And then two, next thing you know, you're at like an 85% LTV when you finish. And then you can't get a loan, and then you're in trouble. It can be, I think, in general, like it's there. But if you use private money, you shouldn't be using it unless you're getting like a good deal, because it's more expensive and riskier.
Exactly. It's, the balance with leverage is a really interesting thing. Like that just kind of, like, that one deal, just kind of showed me, like, I'm like way over my head in this price range, especially if it needs work. So like, I got to tone it down a little bit, and just like drop it down a little bit, like to somewhere I'm a little bit more comfortable, where it's still a challenge, where, like, if you need to be like put work into something, you'll be able to, and like, you're not putting yourself in a dangerous position. And like, that led me to making the decisions that I have since then, and keeping like the 3 or the 4 family mentality, and just swapping areas. And it's it's been a world of a difference just from that one.
We had talked before about having friends and people close to you that are in the business, and that can be an online relationship where it's just somebody that you maybe never met, but you're sharing stories online.
Yeah.
But if you're in that position, be very careful about who's advising you.
Yeah.
Because if you have somebody who is a wholesaler and they're telling you how great this deal is, and then the real estate agent is telling you how great this deal is, well, think about, where is their true interest lie? It lies. I'm not saying that they're necessarily lying to you, but you make sure you have people whose interests are aligned with your interests, because the interest of the wholesaler is to make a wholesale fee. Real estate agents are fantastic, and it's great to have a great agent. I think you got to build a relationship with somebody that you can trust, but a real estate agent is making money off the transaction. So it's really important when you're there, especially when you're new, because it's harder for you to understand what's going on, right? It's hard for you to understand that, oh my God, this foundation thing can be bigger than I thought. And so I think it's even more important, or it's another reason why it's important to have a good like sphere of people that are experienced that you can lean on.
Yeah, that's super big, man. Like, cause like, it's unfortunate, like, especially, for people just starting off, of like you said, like potentially getting taken advantage of, and I really like the way you worded that too, of like finding out where the people that, you're like working with, like where their interest really lies, and like, I'm not going to knock on wholesalers here, guys, but like, just, something that.
Can I knock on them a little bit? No, I'm just kidding.
No. You didn't at all.
No, there's a lot of wholesalers that have value. You go ahead.
No, this is really valuable. Like, you're right. I mean, like, you've heard like stories of like, unrealistic ARVs, and like, if you don't do your due diligence, or like don't have the knowledge of doing your due diligence, like it might not be that high, you know,
Right.
but like the intention of the wholesaler or, you know, of the agent is going to be different than, you know,
Yeah,
but
right.
you just have to kind of find out, you know what I mean? Like if they really have your true interests at heart.
I think that's a great way to go back to say to use social media
Yeah,
again. You can
yeah,
use
yeah,
social media to say, I think if you posted something, if you can find, you know, in niche ecosystem where you have people that you've dealt with before or not, and you post, hey, I am a first time home buyer. I love this property and I can see myself being so happy here. But there seems to be matchsticks holding up the foundation. Is this okay?
yeah,
Like you might get people that you never talk to again, giving you experiences that they've had,
yeah.
right? Rather than asking the wholesaler, is this okay? Right? That would be a terrible idea, I think.
Yeah, it's fine.
The seller's agent said it's not going to be a problem.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, even you know, like a place like Biggerpockets, you know, like you can ask like just about any
That's a
question, like
great
about,
one. That's a great one. That's a great one.
and like people across the country and stuff will be able to respond to you. You know, and it's completely independent from like the parties that you're working with. Like some
Right.
guy from like Oregon could be like, "Oh, dude, like, you know, like matchsticks holding up the rest of your house, like that's a huge problem. Like, get the hell out of there."
Or Gareth Morgan might come in and say, it is a problem, but let me tell you exactly what you can do. You hire an engineer, then you hire a company to jack up the house, then you sift through all the joists, and then you put it down, and then you got to get supplemental insurance because if they put it down and it all cracks, then you have to do the house over, or you can't get it, or you got to, you know, at least now you know a path,
Yeah,
and then that path might be an $80,000 path that is worth it because you're getting such a good deal in the house or not.
exactly. You know,
You know,
I feel like pretty much everything it just kind of stems back to like going out and creating that network that like your team, you know, and like that's there for support, like, you know, to do deals together to help each other out because like this stuff isn't easy. And like it's not something that you're gonna learn in a day. You know, like
oh,
it's like a
I'm learning
lifetime
something
of
new.
like,
I learn every day. If you're not, the one thing sometimes I see from the super inexperienced younger people sometimes
yeah,
is they have sometimes have a mentality of, I sound like an old stick in the mud right now, but sometimes have a mentality of like, oh, I know everything, don't tell me anything.
yeah,
And I think doesn't matter if you've been doing anything for a year or 10 years, the day that you stop learning, you're just like here. And everybody else is going to continue to grow up from you. And I learn stuff you learn all the time,
yeah.
usually from making really stupid mistakes, but like whatever it is, what it is. You got learning experiences, hopefully they're not too costly.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the really big thing is like whatever you're going through, like like you need to be able to learn from it. You know, like I said, like with that house in Lowell, like I learned so much from that. Like that's I'm gonna carry on, you know, for the rest of my life. And then like being able to have that team to go to, or even like another person that has like, you know, just one deal or something like that, might be able to provide a different set of eyes or a different kind of insight to what's going on. And I mean, sometimes it is like, you know, if like your foundation's cracked or something like that, like you might think it's a catastrophe based on the experiences that you've went through so far. But if you're able to ask somebody else that's in your network, like that you connected with and like you built a solid relationship with, they might be like, "Oh, dude, like here's this guy's number. Like just give him a buzz. Like it doesn't look like it's that bad." And like that
Right.
could be the difference of moving
And
forward
that,
on a deal
right.
or not.
100%. That guy might come in and say, actually, you're right. It isn't that bad. We don't even have to jack up the house. You know,
Yeah.
we just have to put some sort of, sister
Brace.
joist in. Yeah,
Yeah.
brace, all kinds of things.
Yep. It's huge, you know, like just building that
It is,
network. Like,
there is definitely both sides of that because
yeah.
I've actually seen people not buy a house because of something that was a really small problem that they were scared of and they ran away when it was really easy fix. So I guess there's two sides to that coin.
Yeah. I mean, and even like, you know, to kind of go in a little bit of a different direction, like people like who want to invest in real estate, but have all these, this bucket list of reasons like why they don't want to. It's like, oh, like I don't want to, manage tenants, or, I don't want to fix toilets at 3 a.m. The classic.
Well, I'm going to interrupt just a second. This is what I hear. I don't want to go down the path of entrepreneurism. I'm either scared, I'm comfortable, and I don't want to get out of my comfort zone. That's what I hear.
Yes.
And that's okay. I mean, I think they're making a mistake, but everybody has a right to do what they want. Yeah. But you got to take that like scared thing, and you got to get it out. You got to brush it off, and you have to go for it.
Yeah.
Or not. That's up to you, but that's the path you're going to take.
And like the thing that I find interesting too, especially with real estate, is like, if you have like a challenge that's come up, like you're probably not the first person to have dealt with that challenge before. Like somebody out there has probably had that same exact thing happen before, and like, if you can, ask and be able to hear out, their experiences and like their advice and stuff, like it's like, like real estate's been done for so many years. Like it's, like how many like actual like brand new problems like might come up, you know what I mean? Like,
I agree. I do. The one thing I will say is I feel like at least a few times a week, a problem comes up on lending that I've like not dealt with before. I do feel like it happens a lot, but I'm not saying it hasn't happened to somebody else. It happens to me all the time, which is good. I think you got to look at every problem as an opportunity, right?
Yeah,
to learn something. And then every time you get a problem like that and you get through it, then you gain a little bit of confidence, I think.
And that's the big thing too, is like, the more like problems that you've had to deal with, and like the more challenges, the more knowledge you're getting that's hands-on, and like the more confidence that you're getting. And now all of a sudden, like you're asking 10 of your friends if they want to go in on a building together, like the more you do it, and like the more that you like go through, I guess, like it might kind of suck in the moment, like everything that's going on, but in the bigger picture, it's probably a really good thing that like you've had to go through some of those experiences, and like the amount that you've learned and stuff from that sounds like it can be huge.
Yeah, I think too, when you do run into problems in business, you can, I think actually that's not true. In business or in life, you can build relationships too.
Yeah.
Or not. You can destroy relationships too. But there's definitely an opportunity to build relationships. If you and a few of your friends go on a deal and it goes south, you guys will either come out stronger or not talking to each other, right? Two paths that you can go down, I think. And so I think there's a little lesson there too, to like kind of choose wisely who you go in business with.
I totally agree. And like, even like, if things did go sour, like if you're able to, kind of like step back from what happened and kind of figure out like what happened and how you can avoid that for the future. Like, I feel like all the power is just making sure that you learn from it. And, because when you come back the second time, maybe with like different people or different kind of deal or something, like you can leverage the experience from the first time to make sure that something like that doesn't happen again, or less.
So like, what do you?
Sorry.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
No, so like basically, like all I was gonna say was, pretty much just figuring out like what part of your process or like your standard operating procedures do you have to alter for the next time that you want to, like go into a deal with people. Like, what was kind of like on your end, like almost try to like take ownership of it. And, I don't know, how applicable that will be to every situation, but just try and figure out like whatever problem happened, like how can I try and prevent that for next time, or like adapt, so we'd have to like come up with maybe like a different solution for that, or like maybe we can avoid that altogether, or just adapting.
I totally agree. And I think when you do make a mistake, that lesson is like pretty much like just stays right here for the rest of your life. But you can still learn lessons without having to kill yourself from talking to people that have done it longer than you, and from being on social media, from listening to Audible books. There's a whole ways to do it. And again, there's no lesson like doing something stupid, right? But
Yeah.
there's still all kinds of ways that hopefully we can mitigate it. And I do it myself all the time. I think always be trying to learn more information and try to
Of
help
course.
you, hedge your mistakes for the future.
Yeah. Always absorbing, and that's something really big too, is like, just from having conversations and like listening to podcasts and reading books and stuff, like you get to kind of learn from the experiences of other people. Like if, and like you're like not involved. Like it almost sounds like selfish in a way. Like I haven't figured out like a way to word it. Like it's not, but I don't know. But like basically being able to kind of hear like, oh, like, like I went to go do this project and like this thing happened and like, things ended up falling through. And like if you're able to kind of like put yourself in their shoes, I guess you could say, and just kind of like absorb that lesson, to a much lesser degree than they did. Um, like if you're able to take that and be like, oh, like next time, like, that's something to keep in mind, is like because this happened to so and so, like, maybe have a little bit more reserves next time, just in case something like this were to happen. Or, and being able to
Right.
take in like just from like you said, like absorbing like all the time, and hearing all of these different stories and stuff, and learning those lessons, to benefit you.
A great way to do that. If you're a real estate agent, if you're a real estate agent and you want to become a real estate mogul, you want to own a whole bunch of real estate, that's what you want to do. You want to be an investor,
Yeah.
work with investors. Even if you had to work for free
Yeah.
or you just had to work much harder than you did with anybody else for less money, you're getting so much value out of being around people that are doing what you want to do. That's what I did almost unintentionally, but I ended up when I was I was a real estate agent when I started. We talked about that. And I never gravitated towards selling owner occupied properties. I always gravitated towards the real estate investors.
Yeah.
And those guys mentored me, whether they wanted to or intentionally or not, just by being around them.
Yeah. And like it's insane, you know what I mean? Like it's a much bigger thing than like just the dollar. Like just being around people and like, like how can you, just like help people out, even to like be around, like I love like, if people need a hand like with their properties or something like that. And, like if you're painting or, what have you, like be like, all right, man, like I'll come and help you, like because you're getting the experience of like just doing that same thing, like, and helping them out. And like money doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like it's just the experience and like, you know, like you're able to kind of like get your foot in the door into like whatever they're doing, and giving them value by like helping them out or like, you know, I feel like it's a
Yeah.
really powerful thing.
Yeah. In general, I think when you're in business and you're starting out, you have to like give all this value out. And and the return will come, but you're planting seeds and you're not going to give the value out and then you're going to make all this money. Like you're going to give that value out. And then over time, it's going to come back.
Yeah.
Even if whether you have to like do rentals for the investors and doing rentals for free or
Yeah.
doing CMAs for banks or meeting appraisers for them. And there's a whole bunch of things that you can do for investors that, as long as you're getting some sort of value in return.
Of course. And like, I want to, talk about something right there, real quick that you just said is you might not see the return right away, but eventually it'll come eventually, like,
I think it's the same premise in social media. I think you can't the whole idea of social media is to give value to people. I mean, you want people to know who you are and about you, but to be able to give value to people. And then I think when you give something to somebody, human nature is for them to want to give something back to you.
yeah, exactly. It's really crazy, and even like just having fun, like doing this kind of stuff, like, and just, helping people out and everything. And like, obviously, I mean, it's like there's money involved here and like, all of us, want to make returns and stuff, but like, it's so much bigger than that. like it's it's crazy.
Yeah, the one thing the younger generation I think has is like time though.
Yeah,
Like you might think you might think like, oh, I really want to be rich. I need money now, but your expenses are actually way lower now than they'll ever be in your life.
yeah,
When once you're 35 and you start having kids, now you're really in a position where you do need money to
yeah,
live. But if you're living at your parents' house, or you're living in the first three family you bought and you have three roommates, you're actually not in a position where your bills are like catastrophic, willing you over your head, banging you over the head, right, with bills where you have to make a certain amount of money.
yeah.
It's the perfect time to give value out for free, all you can, to plant those seeds for it all to come back for success. I bet you if you really wanted to be successful in real estate agent, then if you brokers who are super successful in your office, they probably all do the same thing.
Yeah. I really
Lost
like
you there
that.
for a second.
Yeah, I know my internet just went a little haywire there, but yeah, no, I did kind of hear what you said there, and yeah, I think that's ridiculously valuable, and yeah, like that's something that like I try and like strive to tell people, especially on the lower, um, like the younger side of the spectrum, I guess, like about this kind of stuff, and even just kind of like put it in front of them and be like, hey, like, is this something that might interest you? And like to be able to plant that seed and like let them know like super, super early, and just be like, hey, like this is something like the earlier that you start, like you said, like, you're in a position that you're most likely have a lot less expenses than you would like if you started later. I mean, it's great that like anyone starts at all, and
Right. You can also take risks, and you can, if those risks end up not working out, and you get tied up for 2 or 3 years,
yeah,
you can recover from those risks easier when you're younger than you can when you're older. So I
exactly.
think, I mean, I think 21 is like crazy. If you're buying at 21, you are so far ahead of the game. I think if you can just before you're, because we see it, right? Like I'm seeing guys in their 20s still buying these huge projects, but I think if you can just get into it even before, if you can get into it when you're in your 20s, you're going to be so far ahead of the game.
I appreciate that,
And
man.
your property's going to be paid off when you're my age. When you're my age, you'll have 2 years left on your mortgage.
And like I was extremely lucky like that I kind of found this stuff this early. Like I was sitting a little bit before I was 18. I was just on my computer one day and like something like I don't know what it was. Like something just told me to look up what investing was. And like that's the best Google search I've ever had ever. Like just looking it up and like I just fell in love with it. I'm like, whoa, like there's a whole nother part of life than like, just working and like that's all the money you have and that's it. And like, like everybody gets the same 24 hours, like do you just have to build like a super successful business like to be able to be rich? No, you don't. Like there's so much more to it than that. And like we were talking about earlier with like the much lower barrier to entry with real estate, like that's a lot more possible, than trying to like, like buy like a franchise or something like that,
Right.
using an earlier
Right.
example where you need like, hundreds, like $500,000 or something like that, with FHA, like, or not, well, kind of, but, with lower down payment loans, like 3.5% of, you know, I'm trying to think numbers off the top of my head.
$500,000 is 15 grand, right? Oh,
Exactly.
20 grand, right? I mean, that's
That's a
20 grand is
lot
a lot more
more.
valuable than 200 grand.
Yeah. That's a lot more
It,
attainable super
it
early.
doesn't, you don't, and you don't even, even if you're not staying on just the real estate path,
Yeah.
if you at a young age or any age start to, and everybody should be taking advantage. I think FHA should be used. Your first house, buy a 3 or 4 family. Don't buy a single family that is a liability when a 3 or 4 family is an asset. And you buy that single family, it's actually like it's a weight on you every month. Unless you buy a giant single family and you have like 6 roommates, right? It's going to be real tough to be cash flow positive. but you can buy one or two or three properties, even if you just bought one with FHA. If 5 or 10 years later, that property goes up 2 or 300,000 in value, how hard is it to save money? It's really hard to save money. When we get paid, there's taxes and living expenses. Every dollar that goes into your pay, when you say you make X a year, your disposable income on that is like pennies, right? Small pennies on that. If anything, you might have the disposable income and want to just go out to dinner once in a while and save anything.
Yeah.
And if you do want a franchise or any kind of business opportunity that you need liquidity, you need a couple $100,000. Now you have an asset that you can leverage, and you can pull $200,000 out of that asset to open a Dunkin' Donuts or whatever you want to open up or do. So there's all kinds. It gives you I think what you really want, wealth is great, income is good, but what you really want is financial freedom. That's what you want. You want to be able to do what you want. And then when you have this great idea, the ideas are like worthless if you can't like act on them. Yeah. So you don't necessarily have to have money. You can have an idea and you can get people to invest in you. There's other ways to do it, but it's much easier to do if you have assets that you can leverage and now use liquidity to do whatever makes you happy.
Of course. And Michael, even like if you're just working like your day job, like where, like what kind of day job can you do where you're going to have like, another $50,000, like, that you can just kind of put aside and like not worry about it. Like guys, like we all get the same 24 hours, like working a day job is great, but like, what about like if you bought even like you said, like one rental property, like ever, like even if it was just one, like that's it. And, now you're getting paid from like the rents, appreciation, hopefully, tenants paying your mortgage and your bills down, and not even to mention like the tax benefits and stuff. Like you could be getting paid technically like 4 ways, I think, like Biggerpockets says something like that. That's like 4 more ways.
You
like
see that? Oh, you mean because of depreciation,
yeah,
the cash flow, the tax write-off, and then the actual income you're earning.
Exactly. Yep.
Maybe I finally said those twice, but yeah, no, I like that. That's smart.
Like that's...
if you think about it, if you think the property you just bought, let's just say it's worth 500,000, and let's just say you bought it 30 years ago, and you have been dumping money for the last 20 years into your 401k. How much money does the average person right now that's 51 years old have in their 401k? Like, I don't know, but maybe it's $500,000. And then how much of that $500,000 did they dump in out of their pocket, and how much came from the interest on it? Yeah. And then 30 years ago, you probably at that point, 30 years ago, would have paid less money, but let's just say in today's money, whatever, 3.5% out of your 20 grand, and now you have $500,000 that property would have been paid off.
It's crazy, and like, like what kind of returns are you getting in like a retirement account roughly? Well, like 6 to 8%, I think, like the stock market is like S&P 500 or whatever.
It probably is now, but it used to be prior to the last 5 or 10 years, it was like, I think it was more like 5 to 7, but it's probably gone up because the returns like the last 10 years have been insane.
Yeah. And like, it's crazy, man. Like real estate is just like, it's like nothing else. Like it's beautiful. And like, I can't wait to like
your 20,000 that you're putting into this property is gonna work real hard for you.
Yeah.
Much harder than if you dump it into your 401k, I can tell you that.
Exactly. And then, like you said, like later on to be able to either like sell it, like 1031 exchange it into a bigger property if you wanted to, like, take a HELOC, refinance, and be able to get that money from the past,
sell it and pay for your kids' college. Like whatever.
Yeah. Like, buy the college. No, I'm just kidding.
It's like,
but
having money and access to money gives you the freedom to either live the life that you want, to work less and have a better quality of life, or to do something in business or personal that takes like a high liquidity event.
Yep. And even like too, man, like
Excuse me, I'm
like
getting old.
if like if you think about it too, like if you're looking to say you want to like refinance or take a HELOC or something, like you've had your building for a while, appreciation has been pretty nice to you. Say you can take like 50,000 out, right? Now, like looking at it like in a certain context, like did you work like, all those hours for that money? Like if like could you like take a piece of paper and like write down like I worked like X amount of hours or X amount of years for this additional $50,000, like that I was able to take out, like just from like the background, just from like the town or city appreciating. Like it's like, did you work like hour for hour for that? Or, like it's almost like it's like free money in a way.
It is.
It's a no brainer. Like it's
Right.
crazy.
Right. Because when you buy a stock or paper asset, you're buying it dollar for dollar.
Yeah.
But you're with the FHA, you're buying it at 3.5%. So you get 96% leverage. But even after that, you're oftentimes getting 75 to 80% leverage.
Yeah.
So I think there's also a lot of other factors, like when you do stocks and you cash in a stock, there's an immediate tax event. You can actually push your tax event on real estate through tax-free exchanges, really, until you die if you want to. And then your kids can just continue not to sell the property and continue to not, just keep pushing that tax event. So there's a lot of benefits of it.
It really is. It's it's crazy. So I got one more question for you here, Michael. And we talked about it a little bit, but the question is, do you read? And what is your favorite business, investing, or real estate book that you would recommend to anyone? If you had to pick one.
This isn't, well, I like, I know that this is like the Donald Trump book. I hate to say because he was president and he was all political and stuff, but the Think Big by Donald Trump, Think Big and Kick Ass, is such a great entrepreneurial, I think, book. It's very motivated.
Yeah.
And then Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki is excellent. So I think those two. And then I would employ anybody to get Audible or anything like that. And when you're in your car, it's tough during football season because you want to listen. It's difficult.
The struggle.
And for me, it's even harder at the gym. I like to listen to rock music while I work out.
Yeah.
But when you're at the gym and if you really say, I'm going to push the envelope and I want to be really successful and I want to get out of my comfort zone and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to be successful, you can use the gym and you can use driving time to educate yourself. And you don't even have to read. You can just do it and just listen while you're working out and listen while you're driving. That is going to give you a huge advantage on everybody else.
That's huge. Yeah, I definitely love the drive-in one. Like, yeah, throw on a book or a podcast or something and like just kind of zone out and like, drive and like just, yeah. Because like you're not doing anything, you know what I mean? Like you're just driving, like, like you could listen.
I really like to listen to sports radio. It's a struggle. It's a struggle,
man.
But you gotta try. Right now, I'm listening to a book called Scaling Up, which is about taking your business from one size and growing it, and the growing pains and what other businesses experience and growing pains. But there's all kinds of books out for everything, and there's a lot of really good ones. And if you're in real estate, I would do, instead of starting out, half real estate and just half of the business entrepreneurial type of stuff. Coincidental to your podcast as well, and probably why you fell into it, because they're just so hand in hand. But Dale Carnegie and Zig Ziglar, these are old names, but they're still work today. There's a lot of really good, I think, entrepreneurial and motivational type of books out there, or audio books that you can be listening to rather than wasting your time listening to sports radio.
I totally agree, man. Like hitting both of those, like like a personal growth, kind of thing, as well as like whatever your niche is, like real
Absolutely.
estate, and like you kind of need both.
Yeah. I never read The 7 Habits of Successful People, but books like that, I think, that aren't necessarily entrepreneurial and aren't necessarily in real estate, they're all should be in your foundation you should have before you start getting laser focused on real estate. I would get all focused on yourself, focus on your business side and what path you want to take, and then marry in some real estate stuff.
I totally agree, man. Yeah, I haven't read that the Trump one there. I read The Art of the Deal. I really like that one too. That was a good one.
Oh, I think that's the same. I think it might be the same. Oh no, it's different. I'm not sure if Think Big and Kick Ass and
I
the
think
Art of
he's
the
got a
Deal
couple.
actually.
I think.
Yeah, no, he's got a few. Yeah, he's got a few of them. But if you hate him, that's okay. Just try to get them out of the book. And if you can't do it, there's plenty of other people. That's okay.
It's funny you say that, man. Like there was a while back when I read that book, I posted on Instagram about it because I liked like the business lessons and like the story and stuff. And there were a couple people that freaked out on me, and I'm like, guys, I'm just talking about the business portion. I'm like, I don't care, whatever you like, whatever you don't.
Yeah, right.
I'm like, I don't do the whole politics thing. Like I just like the book. Okay. I don't know.
Go to Facebook. Go fight with somebody else. I'm trying to figure out like what my best ROI is for my dollar. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm like, come on, guys. Whatever. But but yeah, thank you so much for coming on here, Michael. It's
Thank
been
you.
what, like
I'm
2
really
hours or something like that.
It's great, man. It's
Incredible. So we're on like social media and stuff. Can you and the business be found? I'll drop everything.
So I think the best way to find me is on LinkedIn.
Yep.
And we have a link. It's Real Estate Finance Boston, but it's RF-Boston.
Yeah.
And you can, my cell phone is 617-908-0612. You can text or call me. I'll get you somebody that could really probably help you if you want to know more about private lending or anything about us. We're on Instagram and Facebook, but I don't personally, really use those too much. I'm more on LinkedIn, and I think that's kind of the best place to find us.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll drop everything below. Thank you so much for coming on here again, Michael. That was amazing. All right, guys, that concludes our Creating Wealth podcast episode for today. I want to thank every single person that has listened this far. It really means a lot to know that people can learn from me and with me as we build wealth together. Hopefully you can take home at least one thing from this podcast that will improve your life just a little bit. If you could, please check me out on social. That's at Kyle Curtin Real Estate on Instagram, Facebook, and I'm on Biggerpockets. Until next time, let's build together.